Kadosh Boker Tov. I hope all is doing well. We're going to continue with Daf Mem Aleph Amud Aleph 41a1. However, though, we're just going to start on Mem Amud Bet just on the bottom, so that way we get into it. Where it says Tanya Mihachi, we also learned it in a Braita. En notrin kemach letocha charoset. You're not going to place kemach, flour, into the charoset, and if you did place it, you're going to have to burn it immediately. Letocha chardal. If you put it inside of chardal, inside of mustard, the B'mir says you have to burn it immediately. Chachamim say you eat it immediately. Amar Ravuna ben Yehuda, Amar Rav Nachman ben Shmuel. It says Ravuna ben Yehuda, the name of Rav Nachman ben Shmuel. Halacha is like the Chachamim. So Amar le Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak le Rav Huna ben Rav Yehuda. Says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak to Rav Huna ben Rav Yehuda. Yeah, we're on Mem Aleph Amud Aleph now on the top. A charoset more kamar more or a chardal kamar more? Are we talking about the charoset or are we talking about on the chardal? Meaning, Haim, according to you, the machloket, right, is also between Chachamim and Rabbi Meir also to do with charoset, or is it only on the chardal? So Amalei, so he tells him, "My nafkamina." What's the nafkamina? Which is what's the difference to differentiate between them? So he says, "The Rav Kana, like Rav Kana, why? The nafkamina is the question to do with Rav Kana. Rav Kana did make a differentiation between chardal and charoset in Chachamim. Te'amar Rav Kana, but says Rav Kahana machloket, the machloket between Tanakam and Rabbi Meir and Mishnah, which he says that you're allowed to come and you're allowed to eat it immediately. The tibul that you put into kemach is the tocha chadal if you put it inside mustard. Why? Because once you put it inside mustard, it's so harif, it's so sharp, so therefore it doesn't let it to become chametz so quickly. Aval tocha charoset, but in charoset, according to everybody, you have to burn it immediately. So Amalei, so he comes and he answers them, lo shmiya li, klomar lo svirli. Sometimes I come and I say, you know what? I never heard it. And that pshat of I never heard it means not only just that I never heard it, I don't hold of it. Meaning sometimes you could say, listen, I didn't hear something, but maybe you know what, it's actually very good. You understand? But sometimes the pshat of lo shmiali means klomar lo svirali. I don't hold of it. Okay, so therefore when I come and I say I never heard it, sometimes it means I don't hear it, but it could be that I do agree with it. But sometimes it could mean I don't hear it means I don't hear it. What? The Gemara. Amalei Ravuna Bered Yeshua answers lo shmiali, which kolomar means lo svirali, right? Which means according to me, Chachamim permit to eat it immediately, even in charoset. And Shmuel actually paskin like Chachamim, right? Just like I said in his name, and therefore whether it's in chardal or charoset, it's the same halacha. Okay. I think we should put the phones here. Yeah. Amar Ravashi.
Very life example.
What?
It's very lively.
Exactly. No, it's 100% life. 100%. Yeah. Okay. Amar Rav Ashi says Rav Ashi. Kevate de Rav Kahana mistabra. It is mistaber. Yeah, like Rav Kahana. The Chachamim do not argue in Rabbi Meir to do with charoset, right? To do only to do with chardal. Midamar Shmuel, because the fact that it says Shmuel. En halacha Rabbi Yosef, which means the halacha is not like Rabbi Yosef. Remember, according to Shitat Rabbi Yosef, he says that you're allowed to soak it into vinegar, and then what happens is that it contracts, and therefore by contracting, it's not going to become chametz. But rather, he says the halacha is like Chachamim, that the chometz does not contract. So therefore, if right now he had to come and say the halacha is not like Rabbi Yosef, but rather like Chachamim, my love doesn't mean samutehu de lo tzamit hachamu mechametz. The chometz itself does not stop it from becoming chametz, but it does make it chametz. Yeah. So he comes and he says, no. Dilma lo mitzvah tzami v'lo chametz. Maybe it doesn't do either or. Meaning maybe it doesn't contract it, but it doesn't make it chametz. Some types of liquids quicken the chametz process. Some type of liquids don't quicken it. Some type of liquids stop it from becoming chametz. So therefore, he comes and he says, maybe be'emet, it doesn't contract, but it doesn't make it chametz either. Which means that since it's all mixed up with other things, right? So therefore, right, the charoset, which is placed in kemach, is going to be permitted to eat it immediately because it doesn't quickly become chametz, but rather after a little bit of time. So because of that, there shouldn't be any problem. Okay, fine. So we don't have a proof what it actually does. This how do you call it? The chardal, exactly. We don't have a proof what it does. Fine. 2 dots. En mevashlin. So he said that you're not going to take the korban pesach and you're not going to cook it, not with the liquid and not with fruit juice. Lo b'mashkin and lo b'mem pirot. So Taramana, we learned in a Braita, b'mayim. It says, An tachlu mimenu una. You're not allowed to eat it raw. Uvashel meushal b'mayim, or cook with water. En li ela b'mayim. Okay, so you're not allowed to cook it with water. B'shar mashki minai. How do we know about other liquids? So Amarta, he says, kal v'chomer. Umamayim, just like water, shen mefigim taman, which means that they don't put its taste, asurin, and it's still going to be asur. So he says, shad mashkin shemafigim taman, other types of liquids which do put in their own taste. Yeah? Are you not going to come and tell me lo kolshkin, and you're not going to tell me there's a kolshkin that you're not allowed to cook it into? Meaning kolshkin that you're not allowed to cook it in other things. It's true, right? Water doesn't put its own taste in it. There's no taste to water. But other liquids will put its own taste into it. So kavachomer. That should be more. So Rebbe comes and he says, Bamaim, right? What is it? You're not allowed to cook it in water. Eli ela bamaim, that's only in water. How do we know other liquids? When it says mevushal is extra. Just say vashel, vushal b'mayim. Why vashel mevushal b'mayim? Why did it say double language, double expression of cooking? So it comes and says mikomakom, any type of a cooking. That means it doesn't matter what type of a liquid, even if it's going to be other liquids, it's going to prohibit it as well. So says the Gemara, my benayu. What's the difference between them? So he says, the difference between them is sli kedar. You know what sli kedar is? Is that you put it to cook into a pot without water or any other liquid. That's called sli kedar. Sli is roasted. Kedar comes from the lashon of kedera, of a pot. So how do you roast in a pot? You usually roast in the oven, not in a pot. But rather the pshat is that when you're going to roast, it means that you're going to roast it in a certain sense that you're roasting it in the liquid that comes out of it. For example, chicken, right? Or sometimes meat, fish. Yeah, what happens? When you cook it, liquid comes out of it. It's a natural liquid which was inside of it, comes out of it. So many times you don't even have to add liquid. All of a sudden liquid comes out and there's liquid. Why? Because you're cooking it in its own liquid. Capish? Yeah? Okay.
It's self-sufficient. The product has sufficient liquid to burn.
Yes, exactly. 100%.
Fish, no. I don't.
Maybe not fish, but for sure.
No. Chicken, yes.
Chicken, yes. Chicken,
Yeah,
yes.
it gives a lot of liquid.
Chicken, liquid. Yeah, no, I'm not talking about when they already cut into little pieces and things like that. I'm talking about a regular chicken. A regular chicken, when you put, we're not talking about schnitzel, no. I'm talking about regular chicken. When you take a regular chicken, you put it inside the what's it called? Inside of the oven, so liquid will come out because there's a natural liquid in it.
Potato absorbs it. Yeah. The vegetables absorb it usually.
Yeah, usually they absorb, but I'm saying that there's a liquid that comes out. So that natural liquid is okay. The Rabbanan, and according to the rabbis, right, the Chachamim, which is Tarakava, that they also hold when it says Al Tochelu, that when it says Al Tochelu, just 1 second, okay? So basically, it says over here like this: for the Rabbanan, and according to the rabbis, right, the Chachamim, they actually hold the mevushal and other liquids is also the isur of al tochlu mimenu mana because of a kal v'chomer. So he says habashel mevushal ma'avdile. What does he do with bashel mevushal? Right. So remember one more time. We have the rabbis, which was Tanakama, and then we have the second shita. That the rabbis learned it from a kal v'chomer. If water doesn't give its taste, then it's still going to be asur. Kal v'chomer are the liquids that it's going to be asur. Rebbe said, it's not because of a kavachomer, but rather it's because of the excessive, or not excessive, superfluous word of uvashel mevushal. The fact that it said the extra word mevushal, it's mikom makom, any type of cooked in any type of liquid. So now the rabbis, what do they do with this extra word bashel mevushal? Ma'avdilu. So it says mibayle, he needs it for me, like we learned in Braita. Bishlo ve'achar kach tzla. What happens if you cook the korban pesach and then afterwards roasted it, or you roasted it and afterwards cooked it? Chayav, you're going to be chayav makot for eating it, because it says al tochelu mimena na uvashel mevushal. So therefore it means that even if the pesach was salui, but then afterwards they came and they cooked it, it's still al tochelu mimena, right? You're not supposed to eat from it. So bishama bishlo v'chag. So I understand if you first cooked it and then you roasted it, you're going to be chayav because you first cooked it. But if you actually first roasted it and only afterwards cooked it, it's sliesh. It's already roasted. So Vamai, why are you going to be chayav? So Amar Rav Kahana says Rav Kahana, Hamani, who is this? Rabbi Yosehi, the Shitat Rabbi Yoseh. Why? Titania was learned in a Braita, Yotzin Beraki Kasharu Mushal Shaloni Moach. Divir Rabbi Meir, which means according to Shitat Rabbi Yoseh, he says that Bishul Acharafiyah is considered Bishul, meaning cooking after baking is considered cooking. So this is Shitat Rabbi Yoseh. Why? Because we learned in a Braita, What happens if you took the mitzvah of achilat matzah on the night of Pesach? Where they have the meaning.
Cooking after baking is cooking,
Yes,
but you said that one has a higher temperature than the other.
doesn't matter. But it's considered, and the truth is, you see it. By the way, this machloket is all to do with Hilchot Shabbat as well. Are you allowed to, roast after baking or all these things, or that's why they speak about toast. So you're allowed to make toast because maybe the toast is roasting after baking. You bake the bread after baking it. Now, when you're making toast, you're not baking it again. You have to. It's like a roast.
So basically, if you take a sliced bread and you put it on the plata,
Yeah. Are you allowed to do that or not? That's toasting it. So there's machloket. Some people say that it's a sur. Some people say it's a sur because of makeh patish. The Biur Halacha says there's no makeh patish nochlin. It's a pre-megadim. So then other people say that it's nothing to do with makeh patish. It's that you're making a new entity. So it's like a new concept because beforehand it was bread and now it's toast. Some people, but Rav Ovadia is mekel. Rav Ovadia is mekel, but there are some people that are machmini.
I think
Okay.
it's all in how you want the product to be.
Well, obviously, if you want it into toast, that means it's a new product.
That's
That's it.
Oh,
That's
so
it.
then that's what I'm saying. It's not that simple. However, though, right? But this, by the way, this has to do with a lot of things. For example, you cooked meatballs, and then after you cooked the meatballs, you took a few meatballs and you put them on the plata without any sauce. So now it's like you're roasting it. It's not like you're really, you understand? Or for example, how do you make hot dogs? So a lot of people, especially if it's chicken hot dogs, what do? They first cook it to take away all the problem of salmonella and all these, things. And after cooking it, then they put it on the fire. Why? Because even if it's not going to be 100% roasted on the fire, you already took away the problem of the chicken that you're eating chicken raw, and therefore there's no problem. And a lot of people do that. So why do you put it on the fire? Because you want the taste of the roast. You don't want a taste of cooked. There's a huge difference between cooked hot dogs and roasted hot dogs. It's a completely different taste.
I think if your intention and your internal intention is to get warm food, to eat warm food, versus to have a different crispiness or whatever it is, like in the roast that we spoke about yesterday, whether you want it to
Right.
if your initial intention is to get it, to a different way of cooking, that's cooking. There's no.
Okay, so here it says over here that according to Shitat Rabbi Yosef, bishul after baking is considered bishul. The Tanya was learned to the right that yotzim beraki kasharui, because you're going to be tzechova with a matzah which is baked, which is soaked in water, which means that even though afterwards it's as long as it's not going to be nimuach legamre, which means you put it in water. When you soak bread in water, it starts disintegrating. So as long as it didn't completely lose its tzura, its form of being water. So it says mvushal shelo nimuach, or for example, mvushal, which means it was baked and afterwards you cooked it. As long as it wasn't nimuach, it's going to be okay. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yosef says, "Yotzim beraki kasharui lo mvushal, ava bishelo nimuach." Why? Because according to him, there's bishul after afiyah. So now when you're going to come and you're going to now eat this bread, even if it's not going to be completely destroyed, but it's not anymore this bread anymore. It lost its form. It's not. Why? Because it's cooked. It's cooked. Cooking is not baking. So according to him, that's why that bishul achar afiyah helps to be mvatel that it's not afiyah anymore. And therefore, according to the shita, that's what we said before. A person is going to be chayav malkut. That means if you roasted the korban pesach, then afterwards you cooked it. It's a new entity. You're not allowed to cook it. And the fact that you're not allowed to cook it, makot, lashes. Ula amar, Ula comes and he wants to give another answer. Afilu tema Rabbi Meir, even if you're going to tell me it's Rabbi Meir and not Rabbi Yosef, the shana hacha is different over here, but it says in the pasuk Damakar v'shel mevushal shemikol makom. When it says v'shel mevushal, it means that in anything. That means even afterwards it shouldn't be cooked at all. Cooked before we wanted to learn v'shel mevushal comes to teach you in any liquid. Now we're coming and teaching you v'shel mevushal tells you never to be cooked, meaning even after roasting. For sure, if you're going to cook before roasting, there's nothing to talk about. For sure, you get lashes. But here we're talking about v'shel mevushal. It should never be cooked, not even after roasting. That means you have to roast the korban pesach. You're not allowed to cook it. If you cooked it even after roasting, kaddish, lashes. Yeah, give him the stick. Yeah, it's not really a stick, but give him the lashes. Okay. Well, that's what it sounds like. It. Yeah. Okay. Next, Tanu Rabbanan. What happens if I'm going to come and I'm going to roast it, all its meaning too much? Maybe I'm also going to be chayav. Tamulomar comes teach you al tochlu mimenu nam uvashal mevushal b'mayim. Now uvashal mevushal amarti lecha. So that means even if you're going to over roast it, there's no problem, because the only problem is eating it raw or cooked. That you're not allowed to. But to over roast it, there's no problem. Meaning if I'm going to tzlau kol tzorko, there's no isur. Okay. Fine. Says the Gemara, Hechidami. What is this case of tzlau kol tzorko? Amar Ravashi, the shavya charucha, that he made it even like burnt. Meaning it's like mamash well done, well done close to even burnt. Still, it's going to be permitted. Why? Because it's not going to be prohibited. Okay, next. We learned on the right. If you eat a kazait when it's raw, I would think you're going to be chayav makot because of al tochlu. Al tochlu mimenu nam vashel mevushal. Now vashel amarti lecha. I only told you now vashel v'lo chai. What does that mean? When it says now vashel, it says over here mevushal. Right? What does that mean? So yachol yeh mutar. I would have thought that it's going to be permitted. So he said samulumar kim tzliesh, right? Which means like this: the isur is only if it's not going to be tzliesh, but you're not going to be loke on this isur because it's a lav shabi chlalut, which means like this: if right now we know that you have to actually come and you have to actually eat it, not raw. You're not allowed to eat it raw, and you're not allowed to eat it cooked. You have to eat it roasted. What happens if you roasted it, but it wasn't properly roasted? It wasn't meaning it was like what are you talking about? What do you call rare? Yeah, it was rare. So he says over here, I would have thought to say that you're going to be chayav lashes. Tamulmar comes tishu al tochlim min nam v'shem vushal. Only now v'shel amarti lecha velo chai, but not if it's going to be chai. Because if it's chai, it still means that it started, right? But it's not raw legamre. It's not na. It's chai. It's raw, but it's not. It's like rare. Okay. So yachol yeh mutar. I would have thought that you're allowed to eat it that way. Tamulmar kim tzliesh has to be tzliesh. Okay. However, here you're not going to get lashes, but it's lav shebichlalut. Remember, lav shebichlalut means that when you have a negative commandment, when it's going to include many different negative commandments inside of it, you don't get lashes. Meaning, to get lashes, you need a specific negative commandment. The second that it's going to be a general one, you don't get lashes. Okay, that's a general rule. Okay, yeah. Okay, so now the Gemara says like this: Hey chidamina, what is na? Amar Rav says, "Kedami parsae avarnim," which is that means na, right? That means right. Let me just go again one more time. Basar chai means 100% raw. Na means that it's not raw; it's in between, right? It's like rare. Okay, so that's why yesterday we were speaking about in Chot Shia Shia. What do we say? Basar chai. Chai means 100% raw. Chai means it's like it's still living, kilo, meaning that mamash you didn't do anything to it. Na means it's in the middle stage. So he says, what is na? So he says, like the Persians come and they say, avarnim. What is avarnim? It's like roasted and not roasted. It's called seared, yeah, that's the word in English. Okay, so seared. So then that's what it is. So that's na. Okay? So it says over here like this. It says, Amar of Chasta, says of Chasta, if you're going to come and you're going to cook in Chamet Veria, B'Shabbat, you're going to be patur. Pesach should be chayav, but if you're going to cook it in the Korban Pesach, you're going to be chayav, which means like this. Remember that Chamet Veria are hot. It's boiling hot springs, the hot springs of Tveria. Right? Some people say it was there because of the Geinam. That's what's mechamem, right? The Chamet Veria, right? The entrance of Geinam. Yeah, it's the Gemara. Yeah, but basically the concept though is like this. The concept is that when you're going to cook in Chamet Veria, since it's not a real live fire, so you're patur on Shabbat. So on Shabbat, or the same thing with the sun, if you're going to cook with the sun, you're patur on Shabbat. There's no cooking on the sun. A derivative of the sun is an isur drabanan because of the derivative of the fire, right? However, though the sun, cooking b'chama in the sun itself, you're allowed to. So I could come, crack an egg, right? And all of a sudden the sun is going to come and it's going to heat it up and it's going to cook it. I'm allowed to eat it, no problem on Shabbat.
Yeah, but Hameta Veria sometimes goes like a very
That's
hot
the derivative of the sun. Which one?
And Hameta Veria, usually
Yes.
it gets up to, it's very hot. You could cook in there.
Doesn't matter. Remember that it has nothing to do with the temperature. If you're going to put it in the sun, if you're going to put it in the sun and it cooks to 100 degrees Celsius, and then you took a real live fire and you cooked it to 70 degrees Celsius, one is called cooked and one is called not cooked. It has nothing to do with it. It's that chama is not cooking. Chama
And how
is
about
the
hot
sun.
water? How about the hot water, hot spring in
Also,
Veria?
because Chamet Veria is not cooking from a source of a live fire. They actually brought down if it's actually coming from the thing of Geinam, maybe it's live fire, right? They speak about that. You understand? Yeah, when the people go to Geinam, I guess we'll ask them afterwards. How is it over there?
Let's learn it here. Let's learn it here.
How can we understand the principle of Keli Sheni and Keli Rishon with the hot water on Shabbat?
Very
it's
simple.
The same?
It's a din. No. 1 minute. Okay, you have to remember like this. If you took the original product and you cooked it boiling hot, which that's the water, but you cooked it in a source of a fire, so then that will be able to continue the source of the fire going onwards. But if there's a problem in the original source, there's nothing there. It's like tuma v'tara. Yeah, if you had a good tuma, a good source of tuma, so then that source of tuma continues going. But if the original source of tuma was not enough, it could have been whatever you wanted, but it's not tameh. If it's not tameh, it's not tameh, gabranu. There's nothing there. So it can't continue the rolling the ball. So the same thing. For example, I'll give you an example. Cooking in a microwave. According to a lot of shitot, cooking in the microwave is not a real fire. So if it's not a real fire, right? So then what happens is that there's a whole question that if I cook something in a microwave, can I cook it on top of a plata or on top of something else on Shabbat? Because now I'm cooking it. Or for example, if I soaked something in hot water, but I didn't actually cook it anywhere. There was no kli rishon. I soaked it. Can I now put it into a kli rishon on Shabbat? Because that's cooking. Beforehand it was only soaked. Now it's cooking. You understand? So all these things.
Understand.
You understand?
Yes.
So the same thing. And by the way, the same halacha actually applies also in Ilchot Shabbat. For example, let's say somebody has a chole sheyesh bo sakana, and he has two choices. Either he heats up something in a microwave, or he turns on a live fire and he cooks in a live fire. So it's much better to use a microwave. And the reason why is because anyway he has to be mechalel Shabbat. It's a chole sheyesh bo sakana. He's got sakana, but one of them you're cooking, and one of them you're not really cooking.
Understand? Yes.
You understand? So the same thing over here. When you take chamet veria on Shabbat, you're patur. Here it says in the foot. Okay, the Gemara is going to explain now, right? The Gemara is going to explain why. But the korban pesach that you cooked it in chamet veria, you're going to be chayav. So says the Gemara, Maishna b'Shabbat below. Why in Shabbat you're not going to be chayav? The toldot esh b'inam veleka, but you need something that comes from a fire, either the fire or tolada of a fire, like the derivative of a fire, and you don't have it. The chametz veria are not a derivative of the fire. Here it says they're rotchim because of todot chama. It's like the chama, right?
It's important to mention that if you want to cook something outside, you have to take it put it in a pot and bring the pot outside, not have the pot outside.
Exactly, 100%. Exactly. Yeah. No, basically what he was saying is that, for example, they speak about that, let's say, for example, I'm going to come and I'm going to take, right, this, they speak about it in the tzava, right? Am I allowed to come and crack my egg open on top of the car, right, the army car, and all of a sudden I'm going to have a roasted egg. Now, besides the fact that it's probably the most disgusting thing in the world, because you don't know what's on your car and all the dirt and all the, I don't know what that's on your car, but whatever it is, you cleaned it beforehand, keilu. Yeah, and then now you're going to, I'm sure Jean-Paul will come, he'll empty out the entire, the spray. Yeah, Jean-Paul, you're going to empty out the spray.
Sure, yes.
Yeah, on top of the car, right before making sure you're going to make your roasted egg on top of the car. But it's chama. It's from the sun. It's heated from the sun. Yeah, there's no problem. Yeah, you put the foil or whatever it is. Yeah, so it's heated from the sun. But for example, if I took out a pot or a pan and I left it outside, and now this pan was heated up, and now I take it inside and I put my egg inside, that's going to be a sur, because that's called toldot chama. Toldot chama is a sur on Shabbat, because I don't know that it was heated up in the sun, or maybe it was heated up on the fire. I don't know. I only see it inside your house. You're putting your egg inside. But if you do it outside, so then it's going to be permitted. Okay, so now says the Gemara, Maishna Shabbat delobos, you need toldot esh b'inem leka. Pesach nami lav toldot eshu. Also Pesach, this is not toldot esh. Yeah. So says the Gemara, Amar Rava says, "My chayav detani." What does it mean that we said chayav? To kavar mishum tzliesh, because you're roasting it in a fire, which means that it's a sur because you didn't over on the lav al tochlu minana, right? But rather it's because it's a lav shebeklalot again, which means that you are avar in the isur that we said al tochlu minakim tzliesh. So it's coming to tell you that you're not allowed to eat the basar of the Pesach that's not tzliesh, but you didn't do of the isur of al tochlu minana. Okay, so Rav Natan. Matin lelahad Rav Chasam behedya. He actually taught him mefurash. Amar Rav Chasam v'asher b'chem devim b'shabbat patur. Pesach shebishol b'chem devim chayav. Why? Shavar mishum tzliesh. Because it has to be tzliesh, and here it's not tzliesh. Here it's cooked. It's cooked in chametz veria, but it's not tzliesh. So again, since it's a lav shebichlalut, you don't get lashes, right? But now again, but it's not. You're not over on al tochlu menana, because at the end of the day, you didn't cook it. You didn't cook it, but it's not tzliesh. So you understand. So you don't get lashes because it's but you didn't cook it. Fine. Amar Rava. Rava says, Achalona, if you ate it raw. Again, raw here doesn't mean 100% raw, because remember, raw is chai. Here means now, which means raw and not raw. Okay, Memalef Amubet, 41b. Lokesh Shtaim. So a person is going to get 2 lashes. Number 1, because al tochlo menana, and number 2, kim tzliesh. Mevushal, if he cooks it and then he eats it. Lokesh Shtaim, he gets 2. Don't eat it when it's cooked. and kims liesh. Na umvushal, if he eats it when it's cooked, plus it's half cooked, lokesh shalosh, he's going to get 3. Al tochlu min na, not al tochlu min umvushal, and kims liesh. That's 3 different averot. You understand what's going on? Yeah, one more time. There's 3 different averot in the same pasuk according to the Shita of Rava. Number 1, al tochlu mena na uvashel mevushal b'mayim kim tzliesh. So he comes and he says, you split it up. Number 1, al tochlu mena na. Number 2, even though it's not written again al tochlu, but it's the same explanation, al tochlu mena mevushal. Number 3, tzliesh. So you have 3 things. You have to eat it tzliesh and not any other way. Number 2, you're not allowed to eat it na. You're not allowed to eat it half cooked. And number 3, you're not allowed to eat it cooked. Yeah, it has to be roasted. Tzliesh. So therefore, according to Rava, he comes and he says, if you ate it half roasted, you're over on al tochlu mena na. If you ate it cooked, you're over on al tochlu mena mevushal. You're not allowed to cook it. If you ate it na and mevushal, which means half cooked and cooked, it wasn't roasted at all, you're over on a 3. Al tochlu mena na, al tochlu mena mevushal, and kim tzliesh. Comes Abaye and Abaye says, en lokin alav shebichalut, which means you'll never get lashes on alav shebichalut. Kim tzliesh is alav shebichalut, which means it's a general lav. You don't get lashes for it. Ika damri, there are those that say, tartehu de lo lake. You're not going to get 2 different types of lashes, which means a person is not going to get makut on 2 malkiot because of lav shebichalut, but he will get on 1, which means that if he did something which is only a sur, only because of a lav shebichalut by itself, right, he is going to be lokeh, which means like this. If it's going to be that, like what we spoke about a few days ago, that you're adding on counts, in the secular courts, they add on counts. So you got 1 count of this, a fraud, and of this, and of the, malintent, and I don't know what, and they keep on throwing on things. So you're right. If it's going to be a few different types of counts, we don't throw on to you the lav shebichalut. But if it's going to be on 1, you would get lashes on the lav shebichalut. So he says, lemashal, if you're going to eat pesach chai or mevushal bechamet veria, if you're going to eat it raw or mevushal with chamet veria, since you're not going to be lokeh because of the negative lav, so then you would get it because of kim tzliesh. Yeah? Because again, remember, if it's going to be chai, we said it's not considered na, so you don't get lashes. If you're eating it in chamet veria, it's not considered mevushal. So if you did that in chamet veria, you're only going to over on 1 lav. What's a lav? Kim tzliesh. You would get the lashes for that because it's only 1. Meaning, if it's by itself, I would give you lashes on lav shebichalut. But if it's going to be on a few other things, then no. Then it has to be together with other things. Then then you don't get lashes for it because it's lav shebichalut. Understood or not? Yeah. Ika damri, there are those that say chadanami lo lakeh. No, even if it's by itself, you also don't get lashes for it. Telo miachid lave kelav de chasima, because this lav is not miyuchad, right, to the actual yisud, and it's not like lav de chasima, where it says lo tachsom shor bedisho. That from there we learn to all the malkut. And therefore we don't have the obligation of giving malkut, which means Rashi says malkut they learn from vayayim bina kot rasha v'pilo hashofeh v'yikau lefanav kedei shelo mispadi. Right, abarim yakenu lo, you have to give him lashes. So now 1 pasuk immediately afterwards it says lo tachsom shor bedisho. So from the fact that it's written one right after another, it comes to teach you that you're not going to be chayav malkut unless it's a lav which is domeh to the lo tachsom shor bedisho. So now, according to the Ika Da'amre here, since it's not domeh to the lav of lo tachsom shor bedisho because it's not a specific lav, so therefore you don't get lashes. So even if it's by itself, you don't get lashes, according to the Ika Da'amre. Rava comes and he's going to bring down this machloket, which is very similar between Rava and Abai, to do with another issue. Rava says, imagine right now you are ochel achal zag. You're a nazir, and a nazir is not allowed to eat grapes. Now, what happened was that the Nazir came and he ate the zag. The zag is the klipot of the anavim, which is the peels of the anavim, of the grapes. So, lokesh time, he gets 2 of them. Number 1, it says, right, that you're not allowed to eat. It says in the pasuk, yeah, it doesn't bring down the full pasuk here. Yeah, the seeds, that zag, lo yochel. Right, it's in Parashat Naso. The seeds. But zag is the zag is outside the skin, and the chartzanim is the inside. Okay, so it says here echad mishum vat zag lo yochel And one of them, because that nothing comes out of the grapes, you're allowed to eat. Now the chartzan, which is the garinei anavim, these are the seeds. Okay, shtaim, you're going to get 2 also, right? Again, because mikol lo yochel, you're not allowed to mechartzanim ve'zag lo yochel, and mikol shesav yain. Now zag ve'chartzan, what about both of them? Okay, shalosh, because you got 1 for the zag, 1 for the chartzanim, and 1 because anything that comes out of the wine. Abaye comes and he says, "En lokin lash bichlalut." You don't get lashes on lash bichlalut. So the exact same machloket that we have above about 1, 2, and 3. How many sets of lashes? The exact same thing to do with here. 1, 2, and 3. According to Abaye, lash bichlalut, you don't get lashes. According to Rava, you do. Ikadamni. Some people say, tarte udololake. You don't get on 2. Right? Meaning that if it's going to be with 2 different types of lashes, and one of them is a lav shebichlalut, so you don't get it. But on 1 by itself, you do get it. And some say, no, even one of them you don't get it. Why? But it's not compared to the lav, so if you don't get lashes. The exact same what we just learned above in the Gemara, just a repeat, deja vu, just on a different case. Okay? Next. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned to the Braita. Imagine right now you're going to eat a kazait of Pesach, right, of now when it's Me'od Yom, which means you ate it when it's Me'od Yom, during the day, before Shkiat HaChama. So you're going to be patur, right, from Malakut. Okay? Kezai nami shechashecha, once it becomes nighttime, you're going to be chayav Malakut. Because basically the Yisur of Al Tochelu is only on the night of Pesach, which is the 15th. It's not before. So the fact that you ate it early, so since you didn't kilu do the kezai, you didn't do the mitzvah korban Pesach, so you didn't do the avirah of eating it the way that you did. You understand? Because you didn't do it at the proper time. So now it says the Gemara, tzlimi be'od yom, but if you ate it, tzlimi be'od yom, you ate it roasted, but you ate it during the day. Lo pasal atzmo b'nei chabura, right? B'nei chabura, which means he didn't disqualify himself from the b'nei chabura in another place, right? Because they're not going to be over on their yisur of eating the Pesach in 2 different chaburot, right? Why? Because it's not considered achila Pesach. So that means usually you're not allowed to eat it in 2 different places. So for example, let's say I was with Mishpachat Kohen. Yeah, and Mishpachat Kohen, yeah, what happened is that I'm part of their chabura. Yeah, they wanted to be part of my chabura. Yeah, he's got a Yisachar Zvulun with me. Yeah, and then what happens? And then that's it. So what happens? So what happens is that he's part of my chabura. Now he went and he wanted to eat it early. Yeah, or not him, Chas Shalom. I went. I did the avira. Yeah, so I went and I wanted to eat it early. So what happens? I ate it early. I'm not allowed to eat it in 2 chaburot. So now he can't eat it in his house anymore. Because if he's going to eat it in his house, how could it be? We're in the same chabura. He says, no, the fact that I ate it early, it's nothing. Why is it nothing? It doesn't count. So he says, Kezait tzli mishechat shecha, but once it was a kezait tzli nighttime, pasal atzmo mibnei chabura, which means that he's disqualified himself from eating his Pesach with a bnei chabura in another house, because if not, then it's like 2 different chaburot, which is going to be prohibited. Tanya idach, we learned, right, in another Braita. Yachol, I would have thought to say, achal kezait nami be'od yom yeh chayav, that if you ate a kezait nami be'od yom, you're going to be chayav. Vedinu, but it's a kal v'chomer. If right now during a time when it's going to be that you're going to have the korban Pesach, yeah, that you're going to eat it sli, right? At nighttime, he's trying to come and make a kal v'chomer. What should be the kal v'chomer? The kal v'chomer should be 1 second. If you ate a kezait na during the day, right, you should be the chayav. Why? Kal v'chomer. If right now you ate the tzli and you are over on al tochal mimena na, so now in a time when it's not, if you're not going to eat it at the proper time, shouldn't it be also that you're going to be over on the bal tochal mimena na, which means, right, when you don't have the mitzvah of eating it tzli, which is during Me'od Yom, right, and still it's not mistaber in the kal v'chomer, right, that it should be a lav. That means basically, if you have the mitzvah, right, the svara is if you have the negative commandment in a time when you have to eat it sli, so then kal v'chomer, if you don't have the mitzvah to eat it at all, that it should still have the avirah. So says the Gemara, or maybe no, or lo. Only when you have that you have to eat it sli, that's when you have al tochum minna. But when you don't have it, then you don't have the avirah. V'al titma, and don't ask a question against this. Sharei utar miklalo etzel tzali. Because the basar was prohibited, right, completely, right, during the day because of a positive commandment, where it says, "V'achlu et basar b'layla," you have to eat the basar on this night, which is mashma only in the nighttime, not during the daytime. So mimela, to do with achilat pesach, which is na, right, I'm going to say that only from the nighttime is it going to be permitted, and therefore there's going to be the yisur aval tochlu min na, but not during the day. which means like this. Am I going to say that during the day you didn't do anything? So if during the day you didn't do anything, so therefore there was no prohibition of you're not allowed to eat it. Nah, you're not allowed to eat this. Why? Because you didn't do anything now. You were just doing something like an action of a monkey. You were just eating, but it wasn't anything. But only in the nighttime when you actually do have the mitzvah, you have to eat it now. Now you have the prohibition how to eat it. You understand? So Talmud Lomar comes to teach you, Al Tochlu Mimena Now V'Shav V'Shav Kim Tzlesh. Shen Talmud Lomar Kim Tzlesh. What is it coming to teach you, Kim Tzlesh? Umat Talmud Lomar, what is it coming to teach you? Kim Tzlesh. Lomar Lecha to teach you, B'Shah Sheyeshno Bekum Echol Tzli, Yeshno V'Al Tochal Na, B'Shah Sheyeshno Bekum Echol Tzli. That means only when you have the mitzvah to eat it tzli, you have the avera, don't eat it another way. Don't eat it raw, right? But if you don't have the mitzvah of eating it tzli, which is not the night of Pesach, let's say during the day, you don't have the avera of how to eat it.
Oh, that's good.
It's not that you could eat it. It's just that you don't get lashes or things like that, but you didn't do anything. You didn't do anything.
You spoiled the korban. You don't have a korban.
Yeah, you're right. You spoiled the korban, but you didn't do anything. You didn't do anything.
But by not eating the Pesach korban, then you're going to be doing the sin, no?
Yeah. You do that. Okay, Rebbe says, Ekra ani bashel. Yeah, mata mula mevushal. According to the pasuk, it could have just said, Al tochlu menena uvashel. Why does it say mevushal? Yeah, mata mula mevushal. So until now, if you remember, we learned two different reasons why it's written uvashel mevushal. What was the first thing that we learned? Uvashel mevushal teaches you?
Not to burn, not to cook it.
No, first, different liquids. The first shita was uvashel mevushal comes to teach you different liquids. The second uvashel mevushal came to teach you that what? What's the second? The first one was to teach you different liquids. And the second one comes to teach you sharmashkin. That was the first one. The second one comes to teach you vashel mevushal ma'av delay. He needs that if you first cooked it and then afterwards you baked it. Yeah.
The first one was
or not baked it, roasted it, or the opposite way around.
Isn't the first one is water and juices?
Yeah, liquids, other liquids. Yeah. So the first vashel mevushal was other liquids. Teach you that other liquids it's also going to be prohibited. And the second one was to teach you that if you first roasted it or baked it and roasted it. Now we're going to bring another one. It says, right, Rebbe Omer Ekani Bashel Matamon Vushal Sheachol Sheli Elev Shebishlo Mishachashra. Not only if you did it during the nighttime. How do you know that you're not allowed to also cook it during the day? That means according to the Shita of Rebbe, you're also not allowed to cook it during the day. Forget about nighttime. Even during the day, you're not allowed to cook it. How do you know? So there's a third one now. The first one was teaching you you're not allowed to cook it in other liquids. Second one was teaching you that even if it was already roasted, you're not allowed to cook it. Or cook, not allowed to roast it, but that was kal v'chomer, right? That's for sure. And the third one was to teach you that even during the day, you're not allowed to cook it. Uvashel mevushal, even during the day. Not only during the night. So ask the Gemara, v'hai bashel mevushal p'ker Rebbe litzli kedav l'shar mashkin. He says, 1 second. I thought that Rebbe, he was the one that learned that bashel mevushal was for other liquids and tzli kedar. Tzli kedar means that if it's going to come out on its own, right? The liquid comes out on its own, and also from other liquids. So says the Gemara, if so, the pasuk should have said, "O bashel, o mevushal. My bashel mevushal, shma min atarte." So it actually comes to teach you a few different things. Number one, other liquids in sli kedar, and number two, even during the day. So the fact that it was written uvashel mevushal and not bashel or mevushal comes to teach you both halachot. So you could actually learn everything from the same bashel mevushal. Other liquids, sli kedar. Sli kedar means roasted but in a pot. Meaning like cooked in a pot, like roasted in a pot, because usually roasting is not in a pot; it's on the grill. When you roast in a pot, it means that it's actually in a pot. It means you're cooking and then there's liquid that's coming out. Okay, fine. Tanu Rabbanan, we learned in the Braita. Achal tzli mibod yom. If you ate it, the korban pesach tzli mibod yom, you're going to be chayav. Ukezait na mishechashicha chayav. If you're going to eat one kezait na during chashicha, remember na means that it's not cooked or not fully cooked. You're going to be chayav. So ktani tzli dumia dena. So he said, 1 second, the tzli is exactly like na. Just like na, you have a negative commandment, so to the tzli, it's going to be a negative commandment. Yeah? So he comes and he says, okay, bishleman na ktivet tchum menna ela tzli mina. How do you know the tzli? Midiktiv achlut basar belayla zeh. Balayla im bayom lo. It's only during the nighttime you have to eat the meat, not during the daytime. So hay lava ba min klala sehu. This is a negative commandment that comes from a positive commandment, which means that this is like a negative which is coming from a positive. And any negative which comes from a positive is only considered a positive, not a negative. Which means if I come and I tell you you have to eat it during the nighttime, mashma, you're not allowed to eat it during the daytime. But that's a negative that's coming from a positive. A negative which comes from positive is still only considered a positive. It's not considered negative. So Amar Chassa says, Hamani, who is this? Rabbi Yehuda. It's Rabbi Yehuda. Why is it Rabbi Yehuda? Because he says the Tanya was learned on a Braita. Okay, fine. Basically, Rabbi Yehuda is going to come and he's going to say that when he says that the Yisur of Achila Pesach that has a lav, even though it's you're learning it from an aseh, right? It's still mashma bayom balayla velo bayom. So he actually holds that any Yisur which is coming out with the word lemor is a lav. When it says the word lemor, it's a lav. Okay, it's a negative commandment. And we'll explain that tomorrow, obviously. Tomorrow, remember that we're going to finish the perek and we're going to start also the next art scroll.